Good morning, everyone. How's it going today on this lovely Wednesday? I think it is. Um, so, just felt like going live again. I'm in the middle of reading a book series called The Sands of Time. I've actually pretty much read the whole series. I'm on the final book right now, halfway through it, and some really interesting information is coming up regarding what is happening right now. It's just in this book, and these books actually kind of outlay. So it's whistleblower information from a man who spent 40 years in the shadow government. And I'm going to be going through, in particular, book 7 today that talks about the dark VRIL and this parasitic takeover of the mind in these reptilians, which I think is the deepest level of what's really going on behind the corruption and the evil and the darkness on this planet, including the stuff that's happening on Epstein Island. They're controlling these people through VRIL parasites, and we'll get into that in a minute. The book series that I'm going to be going over today is called The Sands of Time. Actually, these are the 7 books that are out now. It kind of tells the story of the origins of time travel within the shadow government and much deeper, the origins, the planet history, galactic history, a number of stuff. It's all based on a true story. Sean David Morton wrote these books after he wrote book 7, the book that I'm going to be referencing today. He unfortunately had throat cancer while he was writing the book, but he died. He claims he was wrongfully imprisoned, given throat cancer, and he didn't survive the throat cancer. The information in these books is life-changing, game-changing information that I believe could easily be the reason that he didn't survive, and I think he was targeted. But right now we see, all this corruption and these horrific crimes against humanity in the Epstein files, and everyone's kind of demanding arrest. They're like, why aren't people being arrested? Why aren't people protesting? Well, the protesting part is pretty obvious to me. That the fact that there is no organized protest is evidence that all of the protests prior to this were fabricated, were organized, were bought and paid for by probably George Soros, the Soros Foundation, and they're fake protests. They're protesting fabricated issues for political leverage. They don't really care about justice. I mean, an organized crime syndicate would not care about justice. So they're not going to pay people to go out in the streets and protest their own crimes against humanity. There's been clear evidence the entire time that all these protests have been paid for. And, either the people are paid or mind controlled or both. It's not organic. If it was organic, like these people aren't going out into the streets of their own volition, right? There is something controlling them, whether it's a parasite, frequency, a whole number of things, or they're just literally hired and paid to go out there and protest these issues. And they don't really care one way or the other. What comes of it, they're just getting paid, right? There's a number of factors that come into play. But I think the evidence is clear. The fact that there are no protests right now is because there's no one's going to pay people to go out. This crime syndicate isn't going to pay people to go out and protest justice because they don't want justice. Right? They're not interested in actual justice. They're just interested in their fabricated political issues that will gain them political leverage. So that's just something interesting. But what's behind those protests, like I said, is mind control. And what's behind everything, all the horrendous acts against children and worse on Epstein Island, there's also mind control taking place there. The evil on this planet, the people on this planet, they aren't necessarily acting of their own volition. They have been compromised and infiltrated in some way, shape, or form, in my personal opinion. And it really takes a broader understanding and opening your mind, because the why, like people don't understand why or how somebody can be this evil. But when we're talking about non-human entities involved, it's easier to understand. It doesn't mean it's okay. What I've done is taken a chapter from the Sands of Time series, book 7 right here. The cover looks like sci-fi. It's actually written as a sci-fi, but it's, if you read the forward or the introduction. It's a true story released under the guise of science fiction, so he could release this information to the public. With, you know, if it was presented as true, he wouldn't have gotten a publisher and so on. So book 6 is actually a verbatim diary about the VRIL Diamond diaries. The VRIL Society, who was helping the Germans develop flying saucer technology, and people think that that's not really, there's no meat behind that. This is an actual journal that has been basically leaked out in the form of a book, and it literally is one man's diary of his time working with these VRIL Diamond to reverse engineer extraterrestrial technology, use these blueprints, and create a flying saucer and time travel technology. And within these books, there is a guy named Ted, who is basically the head honcho in the shadow government. And you get to book 7, and he ends up underground in a deep underground military base beneath the Pentagon, having a meeting with a reptilian queen, as he says it. And I know that sounds crazy to some people. I feel that the information in these books is real. Like I said, it's game-changing. It tells a completely different story about what really happened on this planet and within the shadow government. And things make a lot more sense once you have these missing puzzle pieces. Sean David Morton wrote the books. You can find them. I think they're back on Amazon. After he passed away, you couldn't find them for a minute. Great information about time travel, the VRIL, secret space programs, all that kind of stuff. And then if you're interested in more information about the VRIL, so this is a series by David Hatcher Childress. You may know who he is from Ancient Aliens. He wrote this book called VRIL, Secrets of the Black Sun, Antarctica and the Secret Space Program from World War II to the current space race, Hanabu, The Secret Files, the greatest UFO secret of all time. Notice the black sun is on all these covers. Andromeda, The Secret Files, the flying submarines of the SS. It really gets into the VRIL and this VRIL power. And the book that was written, I think, in 1891 called The Coming Race highlights this VRIL energy, this black sun energy that comes from within the planet, right? So it's a very deep rabbit hole. Why would they let the Epstein files be released? Why would they compromise themselves? I don't think that they didn't want. I think they were doing everything they could to stop them from being released. And I think there's some Art of War 5D chess happening, and it's a lot more complicated than just that. In fact, if they wanted them out, they would have released them under Biden. But under Biden, they did everything in their power to make sure nobody even knew about the files. And then years ago, back whenever Epstein supposedly killed himself and the Epstein files were in the headlines again, there was a major propaganda hit piece on all the MSN networks that basically it was that what they call Mockingbird media. Like they were all saying the same things. Like there's no weight to the Epstein hoax. It's not true. Blah blah blah. You know, there's nothing there. And what Trump did, in my opinion, was by acting like he didn't care and wanting to move on from it. It's like reverse psychology. Now you get them. Now you get the public Democrats and the public liberals to demand this information. And so it has to come from them. And Trump, in fact, looks like he didn't even care or want anything to do with it. And it's actually a genius strategy to get your enemy to expose themselves. So anyway, the reason I'm here is because I'm actually going to play the audio book from a chapter of this Sands of Time series called the Dark VRIL is the name of the chapter. It's from book 7, Act 3, The Sumerian War. Absolutely fantastic information, in my opinion. It's credible and it could likely be real, but take everything with a grain of salt. So we're listening. We're going to be listening to a conversation between Ted, this head honcho of the shadow government, you know, for lack of a better term, and this Queen Reptilian, who is basically, there's been an organized meeting beneath the Pentagon, very deep beneath the Pentagon, and the way the room is described is like the atmosphere of the room can be changed to accommodate any extraterrestrial species that we have meetings with. And it's very fascinating. They kind of explain in the book the science and technology behind that. It's just like a mini atmosphere through half of the room. So It reminds me of the Bubble Boy on Seinfeld, like the divider. It's like they create an environment safe for the extraterrestrials. So what I'm going to do, and just stick with me through this, is I'm going to play this audiobook. It's about 11, this chapter from this audiobook, it's about 11 minutes and 28 seconds. And you're going to hear the conversation between Ted and this reptilian, and she's explaining the VRIL, the dark VRIL, the VRIL parasite, the reptilians, and everything, and all of it, and how they operate and how they're controlling the minds of the people. And she basically kind of lays out their whole game. And I'm sure people are laughing right now, reptilian queen, oh yeah, right, whatever. I mean, if we want to make sense of what's happening right now, we have to think outside the box and start considering information that we once laughed at. So anyway, first of all, I'm going to do an audio test to see if you guys can even hear this, because I don't know. So I'm going to play this for a couple seconds, and then you tell me if you can hear it. And then once I know you can hear it, I'll start it over.
Just for my own edification, Ted finally said after a long thoughtful pause, you had said that many of the breakaway reptilians, the Nagas Harat...
Can you guys hear that? Is that sounding okay for you? I'm kind of new at this whole Instagram Live thing, so I don't know how to play it through my phone while I'm going live. Okay, clear. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just let this play, and I'll pause throughout and discuss it. This is incredible information, in my opinion, and it really, really helps explain the mentality behind these people and how they're even able to commit these crimes against humanity and these children. So here we go.
Just for my own edification, Ted finally said after a long thoughtful pause, you had said that many of the breakaway reptilians, the Nagas Harachi of the Serpent Brotherhood, as they have been called, the ones we fought at the Dulce Mesa, the ones not of your nest, are working with the Greys and the evil humans. How are they doing this? Over eons of time, our cousins began to use a dark application of what we call the VRIL force. You are familiar with this term? Oh yes, I am. Well, before the split and the Great Divide, we did not require much oxygen to breathe and are not affected by the intense pressures found at deep subterranean levels, where actually the gravity gets lighter the further down you go towards the Earth's core. My species are essentially diggers. We used our claws at first and then great machines to create vast networks of tunnels crisscrossing and interconnecting large territories deep underground. With our millions of years in existence, colonies of our kind can be found all over the world in pockets or bubbles and nests of about 900 or so, under almost every landmass on Earth. Due to a complete absence of light, we depend on sonar to see and use sound to navigate our underground world. Our language consists primarily of clicks and whistles, though I have learned English to communicate with you and your governments, and we have secretly lived for centuries at peace with your kind in total darkness deep underground. There is virtually no possibility for the public to ever encounter a dark frill lizard, since the lizards are not allowed on the surface and live completely enclosed in deep underground military bases which are usually underneath what you consider your legitimate activities, which officially do not even exist. Constructed on government-owned land, on Indian reservations mostly with restricted access, one would need a high security clearance to even come within range of a deep underground military base, as you well know, much less to go under it. The dark frill became evil and malevolent. They resent having to share our planet with humans and see you merely as surface-grazing livestock. In these bases, the dark frill live a life of privilege where they are catered to and their every desire indulged. There are even organized hunts arranged for their pleasure, as the dark frill are aggressive predators whose favorite prey is excited fresh humans, as terror excites the adrenochrome to secrete from the pineal gland, which is nectar to them. Okay,
I'm going to pause it right there. So they're talking about these organized hunts where they are basically harvesting or loose harvesting adrenochrome from the terror, but also eating the human flesh. I'm bringing this up is because this is something that a lot of the Epstein survivors are claiming, that they do these human hunting parties, right? And we've even seen movies kind of depicting that as well. So in my opinion, and they're going to explain how these reptilians can take on the form of a human and you wouldn't know them from an actual human. In my opinion, this mentality, this culture of hunting humans and eating them is not human in nature at all. We're talking about an extraterrestrial reptilian race that survives and thrives off of human flesh and adrenochrome, unfortunately. So I'm going to back it up just a little bit and then let it go.
There are even organized hunts arranged for their pleasure, as the dark frill are aggressive predators whose favorite prey is excited fresh humans, as terror excites the adrenochrome to secrete from the pineal gland, which is nectar to them. But then many of your people, or dark lords, now have a taste for it as well, as it enhances health and longevity in humans. They have been stealing humans and animals from the surface for millions of years. Now that the VRIL lizards have moved up in the world and no longer need to hunt for survival, it seems that they sometimes miss the good old days of hunting in the wild. So to accommodate the creature's lust, governments all over the world recreate the same conditions in deep underground military bases. Your Illuminati will release some poor unfortunate soul into a pit, scared and confused. Slowly, a pack of dark VRIL lizards advance forward, while the victim drops and curls up, terrified and frozen at the sight of the deadly monsters. The lizards then go into an attack frenzy as they swarm, bite and drain the victim dry. All of us have a toxic saliva that has evolved over the centuries to bring down big game. On a human scale, it's poison overkill, one bite and you drop.
Okay, so they talk about, well, a lot, watching these people get taken over by a VRIL lizard as if it's like a party trick or something. And what did they just say? I was going to say something again.
All of us have a toxic saliva.
That's it. All of us have a toxic saliva. So if you listen to these Illuminati whistleblowers, they talk about vampires and werewolves being real things. And once you get so far up in the ranks of these secret societies, you can either go werewolf or go vampire. And whenever you do, you actually start to drink the blood of humans, and your body, you start to actually change at a molecular level. And you will grow fangs, and you'll start secreting this saliva that paralyzes the victim whenever you bite them and drink their blood. I know people want to believe that vampires are just part of like Hollywood horror films, but that comes from somewhere. That lore comes from somewhere. And I think what's really behind the draconian bloodline, like Count Dracula, is draconian reptilians, right? And they have a poisonous venom that they excrete whenever they to paralyze their victims before they feast.
All of us have a toxic saliva that has evolved over the centuries to bring down big game. On a human scale, it's poison overkill, one bite and you drop. The dark VRIL lizards have a treasure trove of Atlantean technology that lay forgotten over many centuries. They were willing to disclose the secret locations for a price. In exchange for the ancient technology, the Illuminati agreed to build underground structures where the lizards could interact with humans, and in addition, they would provide the dark VRIL with fresh supplies of humans to terrorize and consume. Protected by the terms of a secret alliance, the dark VRIL no longer hide in the shadows, but are welcome to interact with humans in these deep underground military bases all over the world. This is where members meet to plan future events and watch disgusting things done to innocent people. There, the prehistoric lizard's sick fantasies are indulged with unlimited freedoms and special privileges. Only high-level Illuminati members are allowed to meet them, since once you learn the secret of the dark VRIL, you are bound to honor the terms of their pact. There is virtually no way out, except death.
So once you learn their secrets, they have you, you're blackmailed, and there's no way out except death. That's what we're dealing with Epstein Island. Once you're aware, once you know what this planet really is, who these people really are, what's actually going on here, they will do whatever it takes to stop you from blowing the whistle. So I'll rewind that just again so we can listen to it.
There, the prehistoric lizard's sick fantasies are indulged with unlimited freedoms and special privileges. Only high-level Illuminati members are allowed to meet them, since once you learn the secret of the dark VRIL, you are bound to honor the terms of their pact. There is virtually no way out, except death. Seems a quick introduction to these fearsome creatures have turned many a potential whistleblower silent. Fear of us, as you no doubt felt, is instinctual to humans, with many needing to be medicated just to tolerate their presence. This is, of course, not the first time our dark VRIL cousins have interacted with you humans. For centuries, royalty, powerful heads of state and trusted religious leaders around the world have kept a secret pact with these malevolent lizards. World leaders would receive valuable resources buried deep within the planet. Notice all that you value as true wealth on the surface comes from underground, such as your lust of gemstones, gold, copper, other minerals, and of course huge deposits of oil. In exchange, these leaders would conceal all evidence of the dark frill from the surface population, so no one would learn of their existence.
So the world leaders have been working alongside of them, or the elites anyway, have been working alongside of them to basically create a system that keeps them hidden forever. Which we knew that. It's not everybody buys into that yet, but I mean, it's coming to the surface. That's the next layer of this. You know, we have all the stuff, we know they're doing this stuff on the island, and not just the island, all over the world, right? Epstein is just one of many, unfortunately. But we know they're doing it, but there has to be origins to this. When did this all start? How did this start? And that's what we're talking about here. This reptilian takeover. They've been, according to this, they've been living underground for millions of years, right beneath our feet. They are now working with certain factions of our military. They've convinced the military to build them deep underground military installations in exchange for technology. And they, in effect, are taking over our world leaders, our mainstream media figureheads. I mean, everybody. They're using these VRIL parasites to take them over and control the world through these people, so they can just basically literally be the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, right? So I'm going to keep going here. This is fascinating stuff. I hope that you guys are keeping up with this. I recommend going back and listening to this because it's heavy information.
In addition to helping them hide, dark frill lizards required that they be provided with a steady supply of humans to consume, unlike those of us who evolved to vegetarianism. The dark frill, because of their reliance on eating human flesh, marinated in fear, have become a parasitic race, and we all have inherent natural camouflage as part of our natural protective abilities. We have also used and developed our brains and minds psychically for 65 million years longer than you have, integrating the left and right hemispheres of our brains. But the dark frill lizards have taken this one step further. They've gained the unique biological ability to invade a human body.
All right, listen to this. I'll replay that. They've gained the biological ability to invade the human body and take over the human body. So this is the important part to understand. When you're dealing with people, sometimes they're not even people anymore.
We have also used and developed our brains and minds psychically for 65 million years longer than you have, integrating the left and right hemispheres of our brains. But the dark frill lizards have taken this one step further. They've gained the unique biological ability to invade a human body. They can take over the brain, and by accessing their memories, they can look, act, and seem human in every way. After a period of recovery, the human is able to return to its normal activities, except the brain is now under the complete control of the dark frill parasite.
So the human is able to go back to their normal activities, but the brain is now under control by a dark frill parasite. And what we see is, so the human, in many cases, I think the human is still there. The soul is still partially there, but it's in the back seat, right? And when it comes time to do or one of these horrendous things, the VRIL comes forward and takes over the mind of that person and can control them to do virtually anything that they're programmed to do. So, which is they're a parasite, so they're looking to feed, right? Just really, really dark stuff, interesting stuff, but I think this is the truth of the matter of what we're looking at here. Behind the people doing this stuff on Epstein Island, many of the celebrities, world leaders, politicians have been taken over. They've been compromised. They are not themselves anymore, and this will explain that a little better.
They can take over the brain, and by accessing their memories, they can look, act, and seem human in every way. After a period of recovery, the human is able to return to its normal activities, except the brain is now under the complete control of the dark frill parasite. Like all parasites, they have a biological drive to invade, dominate, and take over, and the human victim dies once the vril lizard takes over. These dark frill lizards have infiltrated all levels of your society and hold positions of power all over the world. This is done in order to remove key people and replace them with dark frill hosts.
to remove key people, replace them with dark VRIL hosts. So there's a movie called Future World back in 1979 or in the 70s it came out. And it's about human cloning. It's not about the VRIL takeover, but what they do is they invite all these key players, these key figures, politicians, celebrities, world leaders, and even news anchors. They invite them to this facility to check it out. And while they're sleeping at this facility, they essentially abduct that person and clone them. And they keep the original body at the facility, and then they send the clone back out to the real world with a programmed script. Now an agenda. It's no longer that person anymore, but they look, act, talk, walk the same. That's talking about just regular cloning in general, programming a clone, but they can also do it without cloning and just by allowing one of these VRIL to access the mind of the host.
This is done in order to remove key people and replace them with dark VRIL hosts. These dark VRIL hosts can be found everywhere, in all levels of your government, business, banking, military, law enforcement, journalism, media, and entertainment. So just how is this body snatching process accomplished? The dark VRIL lizards have a natural proboscis at the top of their heads. We have it too, but evolution has decreased ours from non-use over time. They eject a type of thick cerebrospinal fluid from it. When this fluid enters the human system, usually through the eyes, ears, or nose, and from there it crosses the blood-brain barrier directly to the cerebral cortex. A chemical transformation immediately begins to take place. The victim essentially dies and is hollowed out, leaving the lizard parasite in complete control of all brain function. After a period of recovery, the dark VRIL host can return to its regular activities, looking, acting, and seeming completely normal. These Illuminati even hold a special body snatching ceremony to celebrate this dark VRIL lizard takeover. Guests watch as the victim, conscious, though usually bound, is restrained and forced to sit still until the lizard transfer is complete. The process is incredibly painful. The Illuminati body snatch many people, in every country, all over the world. They sometimes choose victims from incarcerated prisoners or long-term patients in hospitals and medical facilities. Anywhere they have easy access to people, they will body snatch and replace them with a dark VRIL host. Anyone can be body snatched.
Anyone can be body snatched. I would go as far as saying that a number of the people out there that are kind of losing their minds right now, a lot of the TDS people, and you know, I don't want to categorize people in left and right, but the best blanket term for these people is the liberals, right? We see them screaming and losing their mind with no emotional intelligence whatsoever. They actually, it's almost as if a demon takes over whenever the name Trump is even brought up, right? And I think this is part of the programming. In my opinion, and this is an unpopular opinion nowadays, and people don't want to hear this, but I think Trump really is backed by God. He's not perfect, and I'm not making excuses for the things that fly out of his mouth every day. All I'm saying is that I just shared a video earlier. You can actually scroll back on the Instagram feed. They're talking about how the military approached Trump before and they asked him to run for president because they explained to him what was going on. So the whole Trump era has been a military operation from the get-go, but I think they needed somebody who believed in the Constitution and was backed by God and who wasn't part of this club, even though many people want to believe that he was. There's a lot of fake information going out around right now surrounding that. But anyway, I think whenever somebody carries the light, it doesn't have to be Trump. When somebody carries the light, it threatens these VRIL lizards, right? And they're essentially a demonic takeover. And they start to act out in non-human ways that don't make any sense. And something takes over that body and causes emotional outrage. So I think what we're looking at is even ordinary citizens who are kind of unaware of the bigger picture, unknowingly taking the bait and walking into these traps when they go to these protests, which are like honeypots. I mean, who's to say that these people aren't also being taken over by some sort of a VRIL parasite or mind control technology? And I think that would explain some of the behavior that we see, because it's not really a normal, good-hearted person with emotional intelligence isn't going to go act that way and throw fits like a 10-year-old. We're talking about something really wrong with the mentality of these people, and I think it's parasitic takeover.
Anyone can be body snatched. Furthermore, all loyal families within the Illuminati are expected to offer at least one of their children to be replaced by a dark VRIL host as a huge honor for them.
Okay, I'm going to rewind that. I just saw a comment. Do you think Trump is still pure and has a soul, that they haven't corrupted him yet? I mean, it's entirely possible that he's been corrupted. I don't know. I'm just saying that was the plan when they started. What's going on now is anyone's guess. There's many people trying to analyze it and break it down. It doesn't make sense. There's something much deeper playing out that involves things that we're not supposed to know about. So they have to lie to us and give us these fabricated issues and blah, 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 blah. So could Trump have been taken over? Potentially. I don't know.
Furthermore, all loyal families within the Illuminati are expected to offer at least one of their children to be replaced by a dark VRIL host as a huge honor for them. They comply since there is the unspoken threat that should they prove to be difficult, they too can be body snatched at any time. They are able to remove those resistant to their goals without anyone even noticing, and with dark VRIL body snatching, the troublesome person is now replaced with an Illuminati spy, infinitely loyal and willing to report back everything they see and hear. How many of your crusading presidents have spouted fire and reform, or sworn to tell the truth about UFOs or your Area 51 and the alien agenda, only to come back from Camp David, one of their strongholds by the way, singing a much different song? It is crucial for you, Ted, for the survival of your civilization, your species, and your upper world, to understand the dark VRIL lizard psychology, since all VRIL lizards want to be human.
That's an important line. It isn't crucial for us to understand the dark VRIL lizard psychology. We need to understand their psychology, their mentality, their mindset, so we understand what we're up against. And whenever you're trying to reason with somebody who is clearly not themselves, you're not really talking to them anymore. As unfortunate as that sounds, I've seen it over and over again. And most of the time, you can tell these people by the unprovoked attacks. They're going around looking to argue with people in the comments, looking to argue with people in the streets. It's because that parasite is fiending for loosh, right? It's fiending to harvest off of that loosh and that fear, and they thrive off of conflict. I mean, that's kind of what we're dealing with here. These people, these trolls, and these people aren't just going around because they're mad. There's actually a parasite that's trying to feed, and we need to understand that. And this just explained, like, these royal families, they literally groom their children and sell their children out and allow their children to be taken over by these VRIL, and they're actually proud of it. It's a completely inverted mindset.
How many of your crusading presidents have spouted fire and reform, or sworn to tell the truth about UFOs or your Area 51 and the alien agenda, only to come back from Camp David, one of their strongholds by the way, singing a much different song? It is crucial for you, Ted, for the survival of your civilization, your species, and your upper world, to understand the dark VRIL lizard psychology, since all VRIL lizards want to be human. They admire human intelligence and the beautiful human form. They want to crawl out from the deep underground subcontinents into the light and warmth and walk unnoticed among humanity. However, they are not human, are obviously connected to the reptilian brain, that you humans have as well in your limbic systems, and have no capacity to feel human emotion. Sounds like virtually all our politicians. Ted smiled grimly. Lycanthra just nodded. In fact, as malevolent lizards, they enjoy causing pain and suffering. In fact, you are watching insane wars between nations, started with no reason and mindless crime rising in all your cities, and the dark VRIL hosts are responsible for much of the senseless spree killings that occur, especially in schools of children, as they feed on the pureness of their terror. However, dark VRIL hosts are excellent mimics and make convincing humans, but have challenges controlling the balance between male and female energies and so appear as bi or unisexual.
Okay, I'm going to rewind that. We're going to play it again, then we're going to talk about it. That is a really important key note there.
However, dark VRIL hosts are excellent mimics and make convincing humans, but have challenges controlling the balance between male and female energies and so appear as bi or unisexual.
Okay. One more time, because this is something.
However, dark frill hosts are excellent mimics and make convincing humans.
Excellent mimics and make convincing humans. We're talking about news anchors and politicians and celebrities. We've all seen the eye slits and these videos and the glitches, and you can kind of see like the reptilian form come through. They're mimicking the human image, but they're not humans. This is the interesting part.
But have challenges controlling the balance between male and female energies and so appear as bi or unisexual.
They have challenges maintaining the balance between male and female, so they're bi or trans. This absolutely explains the big push from these people for the trans agenda and the gender mutilation and the gender confusion. It's because they're trying to turn us into them. It's like they're trying to build an army. It's like this parasitic mind control takeover of these people that they're actually convincing them to mutilate their own bodies because it's not necessarily them that is making the decision. And they would feel more comfortable amongst us if there were more of us like them. Therefore, they manipulate people into thinking this stuff is a good idea, and they are still, in this case, targeting children. Like, it's okay, like, yeah, if an adult wants to do that. But what they're doing is targeting children and convincing children that they are not a boy or they're not a girl, and they need to go have a surgery in order to help them feel like what they really are. And this is none of it's organic, in my opinion. I think it stems back hundreds of thousands of millions of years. This has been going on for a long time, which actually they're going to get into here. So they are really pushing this, like they thrive in confusion, right? So gender confusion is a big way that they can take over. If people are confused about their own identity, that's a chink in their armor, and they can get in and mind control that person.
And since there is no way to detect the presence of a VRIL host, except with an MRI scan of the brain, most members of the Illuminati pretend to like the lizards and are friendly to the dark VRIL hosts, since no one is ever certain if they are talking to a host or a human.
No one is ever certain if they're talking to a host or a human. So to break down that sentence, they're saying that basically our military has come to the conclusion that they can't really do anything but learn to like and get along with these reptilians, right? Maybe they can, but if you really read this material, it goes even deeper in how just their mind control techniques, if you're in the same room with them, they can paralyze you just by looking at you with like Medusa stare kind of thing. So it's not necessarily easy to confront these people, so it's easier to comply. But what they're saying is they don't know if they're talking to the host or the VRIL, right? So that goes into the Stargate SG-1 series. The whole premise of the show is the Goa'uld, which is this parasite that literally takes over these negative extraterrestrials, essentially. And sometimes the host can be their human self, and then in other cases, the VRIL, the parasite, comes forward, and then the parasite talks. In the show, they depict their voice changing whenever the parasite comes forward and takes over. I think that's for Hollywood. I think in real life, the voice doesn't change, and you would never know that you're no longer talking to the host anymore.
Most members of the Illuminati pretend to like the lizards and are friendly to the dark VRIL hosts, since no one is ever certain if they are talking to a host or a human. Prehistoric dark VRIL lizards have been body-snatching humans throughout history, even during ancient times. They are, in part, responsible for the destruction of the island of Atlantis, as the dark VRIL hosts had body-snatched and infiltrated their way into positions of power throughout Atlantean culture, where they destroyed themselves with advanced weaponry and power transmitting stations, causing cataclysmic flooding and earthquakes when the entire continent, through the use of pyramid technology, essentially vanished into another dimension. One of these pyramids is still functioning periodically, and floats back and forth between dimensions, causing anomalies when it is in this universe, and is the cause of so many disappearances into that purple dimension that you call the Bermuda Triangle.
So that's it. That's the end of that chapter. And I didn't even include the whole chapter. I just so what I did is I didn't take the audiobook version of this. I just basically copy and pasted it into an AI transcriber thing. And it basically just turned the chapter into an AI voice. And then I cut out the parts. There's a lot more to that chapter, but I just really wanted to put the meat of the information in there. So, and then the chapter prior to that really goes into she's explaining the entire history of this planet and all the different cycles of human. There's been like 7 major cycles of humans over millions of years. Basically every 23 to 26,000 years, it gets reset intentionally because they're trying to it's like a system update. They have a bigger and better experiment that they want to attempt. So they'll let humanity get so far, and then they come in and reset them. And they've done this 7 times according to the information in this book. And the next one is on the horizon, but this is the first time ever that we have an actual spiritual awakening and a combating force against these people that is actually doing something about this. We're waking up to it now. And it's kind of unforeseen for them, but nevertheless, that's where we're at. So this time we actually have a chance not to be reset and actually move into a golden age. So, when we're talking about like Jesus and the Bible and all that stuff, we're talking about the very latest era of man. It's biblical. These times are biblical, yes, but what we don't understand is that we are the 7th generation of humans that have existed on this planet. And many of the remnants of those ancient civilizations can be seen, but they look like natural rock formations of mountains now because they're so old that they've eroded away into what we would consider to be a natural formation. I know this is hard for everyone to believe. Not everyone's going to believe that, but that's just what this is laid out in this book. And other books talk about that too. So we're essentially just in the modern era of man, the most recent humans to inhabit this planet. And the way it's explained in the book is they kind of just dropped us off. They basically genetically engineered us and then let us go. And they just let us go and to see what happens. But then you have all these other groups and these false gods and these demigods and these extraterrestrials that come in and try to control the show and pull the strings from behind the scenes and take people's minds over and all this stuff. And they don't let us freely evolve. They understand that we're an experiment, and they come and hijack that experiment. And that experiment consisted of many, many different groups of extraterrestrials. Some say 22 different groups. And this would explain the religions on the planet as well, because what they were doing, each religion was a different extraterrestrial race with its own experiment. And the reason in the early days they didn't want anyone to marry outside of their religion is because it would cross-contaminate their experiments. And it would kind of ruin everything. It would kind of ruin what they were trying to do. So in the early days, it was very forbidden to do that, to marry outside of your religion. There's still some religions that are very strict with that. But whenever you get into the meat of it, it's because we're talking about crossbreeding DNA and experiments, and they don't want cross-contamination. But it's too late now. We're basically all mutts at this point. But to get back to the highlighted chapter here, with the VRIL takeover of the mind, I recommend everyone go back and re-listen to that, because I know I paused a lot to explain it, but there's a lot in there that explains how they're taking over the minds of these people and how it's gone on for thousands of years, if not longer, since Atlantean times. And in fact, there's books out there that talk about adrenochrome harvesting during Atlantean times. A lot of people want to think they were this highly sophisticated, advanced civilization. In a lot of ways they were, but it was through this VRIL takeover, allegedly, that led to the destruction of that civilization. And the same thing is happening now, except this time it's being exposed. And that's why the Epstein files are even coming out. That's why all this stuff is surfacing now. It's no longer going to work here. The planet's moving into a higher frequency where they just simply can't exist. And Jesus Christ reigns and his kingdom will come. Absolutely. So this is another interesting piece of information. We interviewed a whistleblower named Daryl James, who was stationed at RAF St. Maughan in England. And he was brought into the deep underground military base. Well, he encountered a gray extraterrestrial and a reptilian. He found out the hard way that you're not allowed, it's forbidden to use Jesus's name in the underground base, because all of those people essentially aren't really humans that run the underground bases. They're sharing that space with either Dark VRIL takeover people or the actual reptilians themselves. But if you say the name Jesus out loud in a deep underground military base, it's forbidden. You're not allowed to do that, because that name holds frequency. It holds power that they can't actually stand. So if you ever do find yourself in a situation where you're encountering something like that, call on Jesus, invoke the name of Jesus. It actually works. Sometimes they're tricky and they find other ways in, but it just goes to show you that if you're not allowed to, in our own military, to use Jesus' name in the underground base, that would explain why. Because these people aren't humans, right? And this is also why they took the Bible out of school, and the previous presidency, and even before Trump, Obama, they never prayed, they never referred to God or Jesus. Trump is doing that intentionally because he knows who these people are, and he's bringing back this Christian mindset and bringing God back into the picture and Jesus back into the picture, because once enough people can align with that frequency, these dark VRIL lizards, they literally, quite literally can't exist in that frequency. So if we can bring that back, bring that light back onto the planet, then we really could get an upper hand here. And I think we do have the upper hand, and that's why this stuff is being exposed the way it is already. And there's so much, it's such a deep story that most people aren't ready to believe. The Epstein files talk about time travel. These books talk about, the Sands of Time series talks about the origins of time travel and the shadow government. It's all real. It's all real. We want to read, 5 years ago, you read these books and say, oh, that's bullshit, I don't believe it. Now you can't even deny it. Like, it's literally in these Epstein files. Everything that we thought was a theory has turned out to be true. So really, I just wanted to do this video to help people understand what we're dealing with, what we're seeing here in the Epstein files. Like I said earlier, you have these people coming out talking about these human hunting parties, and they're eating human flesh and eating babies and doing these horrific things as if they enjoy it. It's because they're not humans, and they do enjoy it, and that's their nature. They feed off of human flesh and blood, and adrenochrome that's secreted from the pineal gland through fear. And they have a network, a global network that has been providing these reptilians who allegedly reside underground and have been cohabitating this planet with us for millions of years. They're providing them with a food source and a way to thrive, because according to this material, they want to surface, but they can't. And that's why they have to take on the form of a human to walk around on the surface, because they actually really like our sunlight. But they've been forced underground to live in the darkness, and they've had to find new ways to survive. And one of those ways is they can't absorb the sun, so they have to feed on us. But then it goes on to talk about how some of these reptilians have evolved past the need for flesh, and they've become vegetarian. But there's still a small group left on this planet that hasn't evolved past that, and they're still looking to consume human flesh. And, they also get high off of watching us eat each other. That's why, they put human meat in a lot of the major fast food chains, McDonald's, and all that stuff has been exposed. And maybe that's not the case so much anymore, but there was absolutely at one point a time when that was being heavily put into our food. And it's all ritual, it's all black magic, and there's something to that too, that they... it's like deceiving us into eating our own kind is part of this, like, gives them power, right? It's disturbing, but I think we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I think this stuff is coming to the surface to be exposed, and we are literally going to just ascend right on out of that frequency. I believe that is what is happening here. But if we don't understand what we're up against and what we've been up against for millions of years, there's no way we can overcome it. You have to understand how deep this really goes, and it gets into the crazy woo stuff like you just heard about in that chapter. So I hope you guys found this valuable. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to be here with me today. So I just actually, I should have introduced myself earlier for those who don't know, but my name is Tyler Koala. I'm host of Journey to Truth podcast, and I co-host that with my friend Aaron Kuhn. We have a podcast on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Music, and all that stuff, where we go live, or we do an episode or an interview once a week. I have recently started my own YouTube channel. Well, I've had it for a while, but I'm kind of revamping it. So I'm taking these replays from these live streams, I download them, and I'm uploading them onto my private YouTube channel. It's called Tyler Koala Unveiled. And you can find that information or these videos over there. They're still going to be available for replay here on Instagram, but they're also going to be on my YouTube channel for anyone who's interested. And tomorrow we are going live at 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 5 Central, with David Nino Rodriguez. You guys may know who he is. He's been blowing the whistle for, I think, since about 2019, 2020. He was a former heavyweight champion boxer who started kind of seeing what was really going on behind the scenes, and he decided to come out one day and blow the whistle. He has now developed a successful podcast, and he's interviewed many people. We've had him on the show a few times in the past, but we're going to interview him tomorrow on the Journey to Truth podcast YouTube channel, and we're going to be going live at 5 Central, so you can tune in for that. And if you're interested in any more of what we do, what we offer, we have documentaries, I've written a book, we have webinars, Patreon, a number of other things that we offer. You can just go to our website, journeytotruth.online, and we have a conference coming up in Hawaii. If anyone wants to join us in Hawaii, we're going to the Big Island, April 20th through the 24th. There's only a few spots left, so grab a ticket and come hang out with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's see. Excited for your interview with Nino. He just got done talking about Looking Glass. Yes, I saw that. I think he had Gene Decode on talking about the timeline wars. That's something else, another deep topic. I'm excited to see where we're going to go with that conversation with him tomorrow. We're just going to kind of keep it relevant and talk about whatever comes up, but it should be good. He's been interviewing a lot of people, so he's well informed about what's happening, and we're just going to kind of compare notes and shoot the shit with him. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just keep this short. Thank you guys for being here. I recommend listening to the replay, re-listening to this chapter, and kind of just absorbing it all, not to scare yourself, but to educate yourself and understand what we're up against, because it doesn't make sense on the surface. You have to zoom out and really zoom out and in. You got to go deep into the rabbit hole, but you have to zoom out and see the bigger picture of what's really happening on this planet and who these people are. And there is a light force, an alliance, a white hat operation, whatever you want to call it, just people for the good of humanity. There are people out there that are fighting for the liberation of us and this planet. And I do believe that for the first time ever, we have the upper hand, and that's why all this stuff is coming to the surface, being exposed. It's been going on forever, behind closed doors, in secret. Now it's not a secret anymore. Now we know, now we can move past it. And what it's doing to the collective consciousness of the planet, like the 100th monkey effect, will absolutely come into play. And eventually we will just evolve out of this time period where this stuff was allowed to happen. So it's going to take time. It might even be a multi-generational thing, but we're at the beginning stages of it. We came here for this moment, and you came here for this moment. We all play a part in this. We all have a voice that needs to be heard. So if you feel compelled to share the truth, start a podcast, do whatever it is, start a social media account, get out there and start using your voice, because our voice, when we are backed by God and we are in alignment with what we're here to do, operating from the heart, they can't stand that frequency. That's why everything is an attack on the heart, and they need us out of our heart center so they can control us. But if we're in our heart center, they can't control us. So if you have something to say and you feel like your voice could make a difference, it can. Start sharing stuff on social media, do a podcast, like I said, whatever it is. You don't have to go around crying wolf trying to wake people up, because that might just push them away. But what you can do is use your voice and allow that frequency to attract others who are looking for that information. That's the way this works. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great day, everyone. I love you, and until next time.